I'm an avid reader, especially during the summertime. I fill up my Yeti with a gin and tonic. Silent Pool and Fever Tree are my favorites. I grab a book and I head out to the pool. It's one of my few happy places. I read a book some time ago titled The Moat in God's Eye. It was written back in the 70s by authors Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle. Since it was written back in the 70s, the premise of this episode is nothing new. Well, at least to the writers and to those who have read the book. The premise is about understanding the life cycle of a thing, in this case, our country. I'm bringing this book up because I see conceptual similarities in what's happening to America today in this book. And what similarities, you might be wondering? Well, in the book, humans make first contact with sentient aliens in a galaxy known as Murchison's Eye. These aliens, known as Moaties, have space travel technology. However, it's limited to sublight speed, so they can't leave their galaxy. And they have a very limited knowledge of biotechnology, which is important to the storyline. They also have a fatal flaw. Their biology requires a high reproductive rate, and because they can't travel beyond their galaxy, they have limited natural resources. And this means that over millions of generations, their population booms. They run out of resources, which results in a global war that reduces the population and destroys all of their technology. And then they have to rebuild, and the whole cycle starts over and over again. Sounds a lot like what's happening today in the United States, but instead of population issues, ours are political and social ones. And if we continue on this path, our society, which is based on personal freedom, will be destroyed. And chances are we won't like what springs up to replace it. Hello, and welcome to the Office of the Patriot. In this office, I try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left and rhino right. If you are a subscriber, thank you for your continued viewership. It is appreciated. If you are a returning viewer, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future presentations. And if you were a first-time visitor to my channel, well, congratulations on finding it. It's usually hidden very well by the social media algorithm. However, I do hope you find the content worth coming back for. My name is Myron Ybarra, and I'm your host. The concept of personal freedom. I've spoke about this concept more than a few times on my channel. In fact, my first episode is titled Freedom. It refers to the United States founding principles of individual liberty for a free society. I never dreamed that freedom could mean anything else as it relates to our founding principles. However, I recently came across an article titled Freedom Means Something Different to Liberals and Conservatives. The article appeared in Time magazine back in August of 2020. It outlines a book titled Freedom and Unruly History, which noted that freedom actually has different meanings to liberals and conservatives. The article infers that conservatives view freedom to be individual freedom, like the right to private enjoyment and control of one's life, as long as those actions don't impede anyone else's right to the same. This in stark contrast to liberal ideology, which, in my opinion, perverts the idea of freedom to mean collective control over government. And you hear it all the time from the liberal news media and progressive politicians. It's become the Democrat rally cry of late, our democracy. However, in a democracy, individual freedom is not priority, which is why Democrats have been chanting the Save Our Democracy BS for some time. The goal is to herald the demise of individual freedom and usher in its replacement, communism or socialism, through a democratic process. Most Democrats won't say this out loud, but this is exactly where we are heading, and I'll use history to prove it. Statisticians and historians have long debated the length of time a civilization stays in existence, and depending on who you believe, it's between 250 to a bit over 500 years, and that's one hell of a huge window. Well, the United States is at the beginning of that calculation right now, and we are seeing conditions changing that could make the demise of the United States as we know it come to pass within our lifetime, if history is correct. However, I think this is the wrong measurement. The correct one measures how often has there been a dynamic political change within a country in the modern era. Using the data from that answer can give us a better idea as to whether we will see a political and societal change from the personal freedom we have today to democratic collectivism. And as luck would have it, I stumbled across a YouTube video from TDC titled The Evolution of Democracy. This time-lapse video shows a 200-year history of political evolution within a country. In this case, it's across the entire planet. You'll note that the United States starts off as a democracy. In fact, it's the only one. And it doesn't change. But you'll also find that there's a number of different countries that do change, many of them to democracies of their own. I don't believe these countries change from autocratic or anocracy control systems to a full democracy because of enlightenment or some newfound moral stance. They did it as a part of a process of alignment between nations, a political movement to facilitate a one world order. Take a look for yourself. A democracy means that the people control the government, but that's not really the case. The people may have voted in a collectivist government like socialism or communism, but once these systems are in place, power becomes completely centralized and the people are no longer in control. A democracy is just mob rule with a semblance of order. If the majority believes that one group within that society has an unfair advantage, like white privilege, then they will muster the strength by numbers, using democracy as the rally cry to remove individual freedom and replace it with socialism under the pretext of equity through a democratic process. Yes, lemmings will vote in communist leaders in exchange for the promise of equity, and this is nothing new. In fact, this type of political change has already happened within one generation in China, the Chinese Cultural Revolution. It may not be known to a lot of Americans because of our crappy education system and the CCP's control over their media, but the information is out there. Tucker Carlson recently interviewed a victim of the Chinese Cultural Revolution by the name of Shi Van Fleet. The Chinese Cultural Revolution started in 1966 and ended with the death of Mao in 1976. It centered around Mao's desire to vilify the wealthy business people in China, the bourgeoisie, and to control education and denounce tradition in the name of the Communist Party. First was the propaganda campaign that corrupted the minds of Chinese youth by laying blame for all of their misery on tradition, the education system, and the wealthy. We're doing that here, except we're not using social status, we're using race. In essence, this was their start of class warfare. Next, schools were shut down and kids took to the streets. And since they had no oversight, they organized themselves into groups called the Red Guard. And since they were angry at educators and the wealthy as a result of the propaganda campaign by Mao, they started hunting these people down, at first for humiliation and re-education, and then, in some cases, killing them. To keep the fire stoked, Mao had stand-down orders for the police and the military in cases where the Red Guard looted, vandalized, and hurt people. Sounds like what our media and our government did to cover up the crimes of BLM and Antifa. Eventually, the Red Guard started factions of their own and began acting outside of Mao's direction, wanting to gain control. So he used his military to crush the Red Guard and end their influence. The kids that survived were sent to youth re-education camps, which is where Miss Fleet was sent when she was 17 years old. Here are a few excerpts from the interview.
Red Guards were the kids from elementary school to universities. So they took over the country. So there's no school for 2 years. So what did we do as a kid? We went to the street. So every day we went to the street, we watched the Cultural Revolution unfolding. And that is struggle sessions, parade of those people who were denounced, and eventually become violence.
So it was young people aiming their rage at the behest in the direction of the central government of Mao against not foreigners who threatened China, but against Chinese, against your own people.
Yes. He had tens of millions of young people that he had indoctrinated in the government school for the past 17 years. They're ready to go. Just give them a call, say, you are now mobilized to defend Mao and to defend communism. And that's what how they got the kids all involved, and very familiar to Americans now. They dismantled the criminal justice system. No police.
Really?
Just like a defunct police. So the Red Guards could do anything. There are no consequences. And eventually, they start to kill their teachers, kill their principals, and they kill millions of people. It was somewhat peaceful because all they did was destroy the past. In Mao's words, it's the 4 olds: old ideas, old culture, old custom, and old habits. Get rid of them all. That include destroy all the statues. The statues, mostly Buddhist statues, Christian statues, everything has to come down. And everything that is old has to be destroyed. So when they finish with the public spaces, they went to people's homes. And I witnessed the Red Guards went to people's homes, took everything they thought was old. Old is bad. Old is something that need to be get rid of, including furniture, people's old photos, and everything. The first killing took place in a very prestigious middle school for girls. Bunch of girls, young girls, as young as 12, as old as 16, they beat, tortured, and killed their principal. That was in August 1966. And I was an elementary school student. So in my school, I did not see killing, but I did see attacks by the kids. And one of the things I remember so vividly is a teacher. She is a pretty teacher, and she usually will dress kind of nicely, and that's considered bourgeois. So the kids followed her, called her names. Eventually, they surrounded her and spit on her. So after a while, she was covered with spit from head to toe. And that was considered mild because she was not hurt physically. The same time we heard killing happened in middle school, especially in universities. But the police were told to stay away from campuses. And if the Red Guards hit them, they are not allowed to hit back, just like here.
So what happened to you as you got older during this period?
So the violence of the Red Guard movement lasted until 1969.
Yes.
By then, all the power was taken down by the Red Guard for Mao. So basically, all the institutions all paralyzed. There's no one in charge. So they thought, okay, now it's time for us to get some power. And then they start to fight each other for power. And that's when it's getting really, really violent. It become almost like a civil war. They raided the military they raided the military places and got real weapon. Before it was just sticks and stones and rocks, and now it's a real weapon. And they started to kill each other.
The different Red Guard factions.
Because they thought now it's time for us to get power. And then exactly, it's the faction.
So they were his creation. He gave them all this power.
Yes.
To consolidate his own.
Mm-hmm.
But once they became a threat to him, he did what?
He suppressed them.
Yeah.
Sent military to suppress them. So we don't know the real number, but he killed tens of thousands of Red Guard. And then eventually he got them together, the leaders, and said, "You disappointed me." And then just like that, the whole movement was dismantled, and they all sent to the countryside. Many of them sent to the Virgin Land, like a gulags.
Eventually, Miss Fleet found a way out of China and to the United States, which is where she lives today. I placed a link to the entire interview in the description section below, along with my sources for this presentation, and I would encourage you to watch the video in its entirety. It's a very enlightening story that gives a glimpse to where we're heading as a nation if we stay on this path. I'm sure many of you have heard the saying, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." I wish it was that simple. I've found that people in general do not learn from history. They learn from experience, especially if that experience has a component of discomfort or even pain. And given that the bulk of Americans have never experienced the discomfort of an event like the Chinese Cultural Revolution or communism or socialism, historical events offer very little in the way of lessons to learn from. And in this case, it's unfortunate because if we continue down this path, individual liberty will all but disappear. Collectivism will be born of the democratic process and become the new law of the land until the cycle starts all over again. This concludes today's presentation of Office of the Patriot. If you enjoyed the content, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share my channel on your social media. It is appreciated. Also, please take the time to comment. Engagement is the major metric social media platforms employ in their search algorithms. The more people that like and comment, the more my channel will come up when social and political content like mine is searched for. And as always, have a blessed day and stay safe out there.